The rise of the Hittite warriors, the lost empire that defeated Egypt. What if I told you that one of the most powerful empires of the ancient world, a civilization that rivaled Egypt, outmaneuvered Babylon, and terrified the Greeks, was almost completely erased from history? Why did Pharaoh Ramses II, the living god of Egypt, sign a peace treaty with them, admitting they were his equals? Welcome to The Rise of the Hittite Warriors, 1600 to 1178 BC. Where empires were born, legends were forged, and history nearly forgot one of its greatest players. The Bronze Age was like the original Game of Thrones. Kingdoms rose, fell, and stabbed each other in the back with bronze daggers. You had the Babylonians writing laws, the Egyptians building pyramids, and the Assyrians inventing the concept of extra. But in the middle of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, a group of Indo-European-speaking newcomers quietly slipped in around 2000 BC. These were the Hittites, and they were about to flip the script. The Hittites didn't storm in with fire and fury. They arrived like polite conquerors, mingling with the native Hattans, learning their language, borrowing their gods, and then slowly taking over. They called themselves Nesili, after the city of Nessa, but the land became known as Hatti, and they became its new landlords. Their diplomacy was flexible. If talking worked, great. If not, well, they had chariots and weren't afraid to use them. The Hittites were obsessed with horses, not just riding them, breeding, training, and worshipping them. Horse trainers were rock stars. Manuals on horse care were sacred texts. If you could whisper to horses in Hattusa, you were basically a celebrity. Their military was built around chariots, not the dainty two-man kind, but three-man tanks with a driver, a warrior, and a guy yelling Yah. They were fast, deadly, and terrifying. By 1650 BC, the Hittites had consolidated power under Labarna I, who founded the Old Kingdom and made Hattusa the capital. Hattusa was a fortress city carved into the rocks, with lion gates, temples, and archives full of cuneiform tablets. It was the Pentagon, the Vatican, and the Library of Congress rolled into one, but with more goats. Fast forward to the 14th century BC. Enter Suppiluliuma-Fus, the Hittite goat. He crushed the Mitanni Empire, took over Syria including the prized city of Kadesh, made Egypt nervous enough that a widowed queen asked him to send a prince to marry her. He did. The prince was murdered en route because ancient diplomacy was savage. Under Suppiluliuma, the Hittites became a superpower. They had treaties, trade routes, and temples. They were the Bronze Age's best-kept secret. In 1274 BC, the Hittites faced off against Egypt's Ramses II at the Battle of Kadesh, the largest chariot battle in history. Over 5,000 chariots thundered across the plains like a Bronze Age Fast and Furious sequel. The result? A draw. Ramses claimed victory, because pharaohs always do, but the truth was murky. 16 years later, the two sides signed the world's first peace treaty, a diplomatic mic drop. The Hittites had a prime location, smack in the middle of trade routes connecting Greece, Egypt, and Mesopotamia. Merchant ships docked at their ports. Caravans crossed their lands. They were the middlemen of the ancient world, and they knew how to profit from it. Despite being surrounded by powerful empires, the Hittites were never conquered. Their military, diplomacy, and geography made them nearly untouchable. Picture this: the dusty plains near the Orontes River, just upstream of Lake Homs. On one side, the mighty Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II, decked out in gold and ego, leading 20,000 men and 2,000 chariots. On the other, Muwatalli II, king of the Hittites, with 40,000 infantry and 3,000 chariots, the ancient equivalent of rolling up with a fleet of tanks. Ramses, ever the drama king, charged ahead of his main army and got ambushed by Hittite chariots. His men were scattered like startled pigeons. But Ramses, to his credit, rallied his troops and counterattacked. The result? A bloody stalemate. Egypt couldn't take Kadesh. The Hittites couldn't crush Egypt. Both sides claimed victory. Classic. But here's the kicker. The Hittites held the city afterward. So if we're keeping score, that's a moral win for Team Hatti. 15 years later, Ramses II and Hattusili III, Muwatalli's brother and successor, decided they were tired of the whole eternal enemies thing. So they signed the Treaty of Kadesh around 1259 BC, the world's first known peace treaty. The treaty recognized both empires as equals, promised mutual defense against third-party threats, included extradition clauses, Yes, even ancient treaties had fine print. A copy of this treaty is still displayed at the United Nations headquarters, because nothing says ancient diplomacy like a clay tablet in a glass case in New York. The Hittites weren't just good at talking peace, they were masters of war. Their soldiers wore bronze helmets and scale armor made of small overlapping plates, heavy bronze swords and spears that could punch through enemy lines, shields reinforced with leather and metal for maximum defense. But their real secret weapon? Iron. The Hittites were the first to dominate iron metallurgy. While most of the world was still obsessed with bronze, the Hittites were quietly forging iron tools and weapons that were stronger, sharper, and more durable. They didn't mass-produce it. Iron was still rare, but they knew how to work it, and that gave them a serious edge. The Hittite chariot was a marvel of engineering, pulled by 2 to 4 horses for speed and power, carried 3 warriors, a driver, a spear-wielding fighter in heavy armor, and a third man with a shield or bow for defense and ranged attacks. Designed for shock tactics, smashing into enemy lines, flanking, and retreating with precision. These weren't just vehicles, they were mobile command centers, battering rams and status symbols all in one. Their combination of speed, offense, and defense made them the terror of the battlefield. The Hittites didn't just survive, they thrived in a neighborhood full of bullies. They outmaneuvered the Assyrians in Upper Mesopotamia for centuries. They toppled Babylon in a surprise raid under Mursili. They even forced Greek city-states like Troy, Willutia, to pay tribute. The Hittites weren't just warriors, they were administrators, artists, and legal theorists with a flair for the dramatic. Their society was so advanced it would make some medieval kingdoms look like they were still figuring out fire. The Hittites started with Anatolian hieroglyphs, a local script with limited phonetic range. But they soon upgraded to cuneiform, borrowed from the Assyrians and Babylonians. Their scribes wrote on clay tablets using a stylus, recording everything from treaties to recipes to royal gossip. Hittite art was bold, symbolic, and deeply religious. Think stone reliefs of gods, kings, and mythical beasts. Their style was linear and stylized, with strong outlines and flat figures, not flashy, but unmistakably Hittite. Famous works include the Lion Gate and Yezelekiah Sanctuary, where gods parade in stone like a divine fashion show. The Hittites weren't just about smashing skulls, they had a legal code called the Code of Nephilim. Murder, death penalty, theft, fines or restitution. Slaves, surprisingly progressive, they could marry, own property, and even buy their freedom. And justice wasn't just handed down by the king. Enter the Panku, a council of nobles and officials who prosecuted crimes, settled disputes, occasionally told the king, maybe don't execute that guy today. At the heart of it all was Hattusa, the capital city, massive stone walls, lion-guarded gates, and temples galore. The king was chief priest, general, and CEO, a multitasker with a crown. One standout ruler was Suppiluliuma I, a military genius and diplomatic wizard. And religion? The Hittites were polytheistic to the max. They worshipped 1,000 gods, including their own, their neighbors, and probably their enemies too. This religious tolerance earned them the nickname People of 1,000 Gods. Their pantheon was a mashup of Hadean, Hurrian, Mesopotamian, and Indo-European deities, the original spiritual buffet. In 1274 BC, the Hittites clashed with Egypt at the Battle of Kadesh. Thousands of chariots, dust clouds, and dramatic speeches. The result? A draw. But the Hittites held the city. Ramses II eventually signed the world's first peace treaty, recognizing the Hittites as equals. But peace didn't last. After Kadesh, things got messy. Succession crises and civil wars tore the empire apart. The Assyrians pounced, defeating the Hittites at the Battle of Nehria. Climate change brought drought and famine, pushing the population to the brink. In 1190 BC, Hattusa was burned and abandoned, likely by the Kaskians or Sea Peoples. The once mighty empire crumbled. Pirates and looters picked over the ruins. The survivors scattered, some forming Neo-Hittite city-states, others vanishing into history. Despite their power, the Hittites were forgotten for centuries. Their name lingered in the Bible, but no one knew who they really were. Then in the 20th century, archaeologists uncovered Hattusa's ruins and thousands of tablets. The Hittites were real, and they had receipts. Today, they're recognized as the first Indo-European civilization with a written language. Pioneers of iron metallurgy, masters of chariot warfare and diplomacy, a society that valued law, tolerance, and innovation. If you enjoyed this journey, the rise of the Hittite warriors, one of history's most advanced and mysterious empires, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss another epic tale from the ancient world. We've got more thrilling stories, lost civilizations, and untold legends coming your way. Stay curious, stay inspired, and stay with us.